Okay. I'm wondering if there will be 4 of us or 5 of us. It looks like we are 4 of us. So hello everyone. I suppose who has experience in the empathy circle already? I have, you, James. Okay, so maybe let's start with modeling the process. It will be James and me. I can reflect you, James, if you agree to be first speaker.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So we will show Jennifer and Emma how it works, how we do that. It will be easier for you if you see how we proceed. Okay, so I will start. I think we have 4 people in our circle, so we can go for 5 minutes every round. And if you are ready, you can start, James.
Yeah, I'm ready. Hi, everyone. So this topic of how to create direct actions that also include an element of empathy or empathy circle process is far from obvious. I have some ideas. I've been trying to do things like this for a very long time, and I'm here because I think this is a great way to start doing something like this. I think it's important to kind of have, teams that work together and know each other first, because, forget about direct action, but any kind of meaningful work requires a working relationship with people, knowing each other's skills and such. So
Okay.
you want to?
Yeah, if I may, okay.
Yeah,
English is
sure.
not my native
Yeah,
language.
sure.
Okay, so what I hear from you, are you hearing me properly? Because my connection is unstable.
Perfectly.
Okay. So what I hear from you is that you think that empathic direct action is something quite special, but the first thing is to build the team of people who are committed to the same ideas and ready to work, whatever it would be. Important thing is the group people that are kind of connected and build community ready to be committed to the issue. Is that what you meant?
Um,
Not
not
really.
not committed, but you just understand and have familiarity with, right? Maybe committed
Okay.
is even one step further, but before committed, just the understanding of the process and of each other to
Okay.
build on.
So the group who understand the idea and understand each other to move forward.
Yes, I think that that's a necessary element to, to creating foundation for any meaningful kind of direct action work. um so it's tricky. I feel it's a little tricky, even what we're doing right now, because empathy circle work for me works well in getting in touch with feelings and talking to each other about feelings, personal subjects. And that's a bit different than planning a direct action, which is going to be locale based, issue based, and I work on creating empathy workshops here in Syracuse, New York, and we work with prisoners inside prisons or people who have been released from prison, and we try to get people who have been formally incarcerated to support each other, to lead the workshops, and to support other prisoners who are being released in making a life. And
If I may, okay.
yes, please go ahead.
So you think that this situation is a little bit tricky, this probably meeting, because you feel like empathy circle is very good tool for talk about emotions, feelings, and kind of personal experience. When such a topic is more like in planning, intellectual analysis, and it might be a little bit tricky. And the second thing you start talking about is the fact that you're working with some prisoners to help them uh, support each other.
Yeah, was that time?
Yes, it was time,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
think you should maybe you would like to end the
I'll
idea.
just finish the idea, just to say that both are important, the intellectual and the emotional, and it's there's some foundational work that's necessary before doing things more complex like direct actions from that in that way.
So you think that there is an emotional but also intellectual part of this whole I don't know how to name it, issue, let's say,
Yeah, work.
this work, yeah, this work, and there is a need for building some basis, some foundation for any further action. So it might be a very concrete, very stable foundation for any further action.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Katerina.
Okay, thank you. So
Karolina, excuse me.
you can call me Carol, shortly
Okay.
Carol. Jennifer and Emma, as you said, as you might seen, James was speaker, I was active listener, and now it's a turn. I'm becoming a speaker, and I'm choosing another active listener. And maybe I choose Emma. The rule is that we try to give chance to everybody, but we always can choose whoever we want. So it's good to give chance to everyone, but also it's our choice whom we choose for being active listener. So Emma, would you listen to me?
Yes.
Okay,
I will.
thank you. I will start time. Yeah, I think it's important what James just said about building some kind of ground, ground for basis for any action. It is important. And I suppose during such meetings, we can create some kind of mutual understanding and sort of community for any further actions. I will stop there, so I give you a chance to reflect me.
Okay, well, you're agreeing with James and about the fact that you need to have some ground that you build together before you go on actions, and that you need to have some mutual understanding before you can even go into empathy.
Well, I didn't say that, but it's actually true, so I can accept that. Yeah, and I have a lot of dreams about this empathic direct action. It's an idea that is kind of percolating in our facilitators group for last few months, and suddenly we decided, yes, let's do it. So I'm excited about it, also afraid, scared, even scared that it might not work that good as we would like to. I stopped there.
You've been dreaming of this empathic direct action for a while, and you're part of a group locally where you're percolating these ideas and coming up with them for a few months. And you're really excited, but you're also scared it won't work.
Yeah. I would like to see empathic direct action slightly different from what Edwin was showing us during this short presentation. I would like to see something more like people's assembly. So we discuss particular topic, and it has the continuation in action we perform after the mass scale empathic direct action, empathic direct listening, speaking, and then we kind of create something that we want to do. So it would be more like mass empathic consent making process, something like that. I would like to see.
I'm afraid I missed the last 3 words. I just didn't get them. It was quite important.
Well, I was thinking about mass empathic consent making process, decision making process.
Right. Okay. So you're saying your ideas on empathic action is different, and it's more like the people's assembly, which you're already doing, I guess. Where you we discuss the particular topics first, then you're wanting to create some action to do together. And then you've got this idea of mass empathic decision-making process.
Yeah.
Which are like, oh, no, I can't ask. I want to know more about it. So, yes.
So it would be like a huge, enormous, big, that's my time. It would be a huge discussion, massive, I don't know how to say, broad discussion in many circles, and somehow then making a process, the decision making process, creating kind of something like that. That's what I have in my imagination.
Okay, so this is a huge, very broad sort of discussion in many circles, and then you're going to get to a decision-making process after you've had these discussions.
Yeah,
I think that's a good idea.
Thank you. I feel fully heard. Thank you. So now it's your turn, Emma. You need to pick up a listener who will be reflecting you.
Shall I go for Jennifer? Is that all right, Jennifer?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Right, where do I start? My role in the local group is very much, I'm not involved with direct action. I must, because I'm older, you know, I'm in my 70s and I can't go and camp out in the middle of London. So I support the people who do. but I also am fascinated by empathy. I run the regenerative culture side of things here. And so empathy interests me, but I'm almost sad that the topic we're talking about is having to do with direct action, because I think, like James, wanted to talk more broadly, because I don't feel I have a role in direct action.
So what I hear you saying is that you work with regenerative culture, and that your role with action is a support role. So what you were coming into this wanting to do is have a more broad conversation, because your job is not to do with planning direct action. Is that what you said? Okay.
Yes, yes. And I think the role of empathy in XR is huge, which is why I've joined this circle. But I'm a life coach, and so I'm very aware of playing to your strengths. So for me to sit around at meetings and listen to planning for direct action, they all know me there. And if it's a direct action planning group, I go home, because I don't want to waste my skills. Whereas things like the People's Assembly and stuff, I have a lot to offer. So I'm sort of, I'd like something here, hearing about empathy circles, but in a different way. I don't know. So I'm feeling a little disappointed so far.
So I hear that at the moment you're feeling kind of disappointed because you were looking for something a little bit different in terms of topic for this empathy circle. You were saying that you're a life coach and you feel like it's important, like within your work within XR, to play to your strengths. That while you feel like the role of empathy in XR is huge, when it comes to like action planning, those are not necessarily meetings that you want to be part of, because it doesn't play to your strengths.
Yeah, and I'm really supportive of the people who it does play to their strengths, but they're too busy planning their actions to come on grief empathy listening circles. So there's kind of it's like, if you're a me type person, you want it to be different. If you're an action type person, you're not in an empathy circle. So I've got a bit of a dilemma going on.
So I hear you feeling like there's a split between action people and maybe people who are more drawn to empathy circle, and you're feeling a little bit having a dilemma that you're not seeing how those two things go together?
No, that isn't quite it. I don't see a split. I see the people who are action people are great, and my job is supporting them with my empathy. It's so so I've wanted the only split is my disappointment in this group, because it's not supporting where I'm at. But that's being terribly selfish, and I'm sure the whole thing is brilliant, but I'm not sure it's my baby.
Okay, so I hear you feeling a little personally frustrated with the topic, in that you want to be able to support action, like you feel like that's your job, but you were looking for a different kind of conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Is it time?
Yes, it's time. Time is up. So now it's turn. Jennifer is choosing somebody to whom she will be speaking to.
James? Yeah. Okay. So I kind of, I love this idea because some of the conversation that we've been having recently is around strategy and what kind of action and what kind of targets we're looking at. I too am not an action person. I am outreach. My job. I feel like my strengths are much more in sort of the education aspect and drawing people in. And I do a lot of work helping people find their spot, where their skills are and where that will meet. Yeah.
Yeah. So you are engaged in outreach mostly, and not so much direct action, but bringing people in and helping them identify what their skills or contributions might be, and helping them to integrate.
Yeah. But I also find like outreach in some ways is, I say this sometimes and people cringe, but outreach in some ways is sales. And what people are coming to us, that our product is action. And we have people coming in for action. And if I don't have a, like, okay, here's a date, here's a place where we're doing something, I don't have sort of they don't have the energy and the impetus to kind of go through the training and to sit through meetings in order to go to something and be there. And I've been struggling a little bit with the fact that we don't have an action strategy plan yet. And I want one now.
So your understanding of the work you do is that it's like you're selling a product to people who are coming in. You express some discomfort about thinking about it like that, but that's how you see it. It's you're offering people the product of an action to get involved with, and you identify that they are most comfortable or happy when they know exactly what date and action is being offered to them to get involved in. And on the other hand, if they come in and you just invite them to be a part of meetings that are where the actions are still being formed, they get frustrated, or they don't connect as easily, integrate as easily.
Yeah, I think so. However, been having conversations recently around strategy and targets, and people talking about banks and government and where are we going after. And what's really spoken to me is the idea of citizens assemblies, and that XRs, I think that really that is the thing that we can do differently and bring in a way that maybe other groups can't, are this teaching people another form of deliberative democracy. And that I feel so desperately that like our government here right now is just broken. And I would love to see people learn more about how a different, another process could help us around that. Yeah, I'll stop there for a sec.
Sure. So having meetings around strategy and target, people discussing different things, you think one of the best things that XR has to offer is their way for engaging in direct democracy and deliberative discussions through citizen assemblies, and you want to make that available. You'd like to help people learn about that, even just know about it, because you see the way government is functioning in, let's say, in the US is totally dysfunctional. And you think that this is an alternative that would be better for people.
Yeah. So I kind of love this idea of these empathy circles because I feel like this is the building block for being able to make bigger, harder decisions, like say in a citizens assembly. And that if we're doing the same kind of actions over and over again, like disruptive, okay. But what I would love to picture is an action where we have 20 people, 20 different circles across a park, and you take over the park with empathy circles. It's not hard to build, it's not hard to plan, it just requires, I think, training people to facilitate and lots of posters with diagrams on how it works. So I love this idea as an action.
Okay, let me get that last piece. So you see the work that we're doing right now is the building block of these citizen assemblies, and one direct action that you'd love to see is, for example, 20 empathy groups taking over a park, and you just love the idea of that, and you'd see that it would require some learning and maybe some good diagrams for people to understand it clearly, how to do it.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Okay, so it's my turn again. I guess I will. So, Emma, would you like to hear me? Reflect
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Let me just change my gap view. Okay. All right. So I was part of Occupy, and I was part of many of these very large assemblies, making large decisions together. And that was before I was really doing any empathy circle work. And it was very frustrating. And so since then, I have participated in really large empathy circles, sometimes as big as over 100 people, doing something like what we're doing. And I found it extraordinarily exciting and satisfying. And so I agree. I think that what we're doing here are the building blocks for doing larger actions. Yes, please.
Can I speak about the book
Yes,
before we go to
yes.
that? You were part of Occupy, and that was and big groups, big things going on. But before you started Empathy Circles, and you were frustrated with that, and you actually like the idea of really large empathy circles, and you find it extremely satisfying and exciting.
Yes, thank you. The other thing that I find really meaningful is when I get to do empathy circles in person. So I do 2 empathy circles a week in person that I find that the quality of connection is more powerful than what happens online. So I see that there are a lot of different ways to do this, and each has its benefits, because although I like the quality of connection in person, the opportunities for meeting and having dialogue across greater differences, people in different cities and countries, is what I get online, which is what I don't get in the in-person groups.
So you've sort of got these 2 different things that you enjoy both. You love and find meaningful empathy circles. And the in-person ones, which you do twice a week, you find more powerful than the online work, even though obviously the online work you have a wider selection of people. But your particular love is the in-person ones.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I think that's what I said, but it's not. I'm realizing it's not that I prefer one to the other. I've spent a lot of time in the last 10 years or longer trying to create empathy environments online to hold conflict, and it's really difficult, and I think it's really valuable. I think what Edwin is doing is very unique, and I want to support it. And I also have very strong opinions about how I would like it to be done a little bit differently as well.
Okay, so you've spent a lot of time in the last 10 years with doing stuff in connection with empathy and with holding conflict, and you're loving and respecting these circles here and how they run, but you think they're unique, but you've got some strong opinions of how you'd like to see them different. I'm not sure how you've got strong ideas of what you'd like.
Yes. I didn't say what. Great, we're done.
Are you heard?
I am. Thank you. So
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. I just time end.
You're the evil time controller.
Sorry. Emma, your turn. You picking up somebody you want to speak.
You?
Okay.
Yeah.
I will listen to you.
Okay. Well, empathy is an enormous subject to me. I mean, I was a mental health professional for over 40 years before I retired, and I'm a holistic life coach, and I'm an empath. I pick up on people all the time. And it wasn't until I did, what's it called, nonviolent communication work, I discovered something called emotional slavery, and discovered I have been an emotional slave all my life. So then I went through the obnoxious phase.
Let me reflect that it might be difficult for me. So you spent some 40 years of working in mental health as mental health. I don't know how to say that. Specialist.
For therapist.
Therapist.
Yeah, I said professional, but yeah.
Professional therapist, and you are actually an empath, and you also were working with nonviolent communication, and you discovered that you are actually an emotional slave. That's what you mean?
Yeah. Which isn't a term I'd ever heard before, and I only learned this less than a year ago. And so I then am attempting to change my whole, I mean, I'm in early 70s and I've always been this way. I just suck up other people's emotions. And so the whole empathy thing is a very loaded word to me.
So you feel like your whole life was being like that, and your expression is you were sucking emotions from other people, and it was kind of overloaded. You were overloaded with
Yeah, yeah,
other people's emotions, feelings.
yeah, yeah. And so this whole word has changed its significance for me. And yeah, I have very mixed feelings about empathy at the moment. And I am learning how to have some cut off, how to choose not to feel it.
So you feel kind of overwhelmed with this whole stuff with empathy, and you now trying to learn how to cut it off, kind of build the defense or something that protects you from the too much in impact.
Yes. And so because of that, I'm interested in how one could take the concept of empathy out. Yeah. Yeah, I'm there's a lot going on with me around it. Yeah.
So you thinking about how the process of empathic listening or speaking might be used. That's what you mean?
Yes. I don't know. I'm just very confused. So I'm sure it's confusing feeding back to me because I'm confused.
So
but you're doing a good job.
you're feeling confused about your own thoughts and feelings, and you're thinking
Yes.
about this whole idea of empathy circle, and not only circle, empathy dialogue, let's say, and you feel confused, you don't have clarity about it.
No, and I'm feeling I'm sort of I did get quite ill a few years ago, simply overload, and so I'm now back feeling good, but I'm just aware of not being too empathetic. But thank you for listening.
So you had some moments in your last years that you were very overloaded with your feelings and this empathic experience, and now you don't feel like that, but you anyway want to kind of learn how to control it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I didn't say that, but you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will choose Jennifer. Jennifer, would you listen to me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start time. Yeah, I feel like Emma was talking about dark side of empathy, when empathic attitude is not mutual between people. So one person is very empathic, but other people who around surrounding this person are not empathic at all, or less empathic, and it's kind of overwhelming for the person who is especially empath. So I feel like this is the situation Emma describing.
So what you're saying is that Emma was describing sort of the dark side of empathy, that if it's not a mutual relationship, that it can be really overwhelming for someone who's more empathic. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's my impression. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my impression that this is the situation Emma describes. and it might be really harmful to the empathic person, I think. And
So,
mhm.
so you were saying that was your understanding of what Emma was saying, but that you also are thinking, oh, like that's must be true. Like it could be really hard for the empathic person.
Yeah, yeah. And I also like this note, what Emma was mentioning, that there are people who are people of actions and people of I don't know how to describe regenerate. I would like to call it regeneration or regenerative culture. It's kind of different types of different states of mind. I observed that during some actions, when people were preparing to action, they were not able to talk. They were not able to hear each other. They were so much in a state of action, mobilization. It was like hearing only orders and demands and any decisions making. It was just only like an act, and I call it action state of mind. In contradiction to talking state of mind, when people are kind of more released and able to hear each other. And yeah, maybe I stop there.
So you're saying that you see you've had the experience of seeing people getting ready for actions that they're not really able to talk, so that maybe there's this action state of mind that's different than a talking state of mind.
Yeah, and actually listening to each other's state of mind. They were not able to hear each other. They were hearing only what they wanted to hear. And it was creating a lot of conflicts before the action. And after action, everybody was in state of conflicts with somebody else because they didn't hear each other preparing to the action. So it was a very tense situation, but I understand that they were just in action state of mind. They were not able to hear each other. So I'm curious if it's possible to create a different quality, an action that is actually about listening to each other. I'm curious if it's possible and how it's changed the whole situation, kind of flip upside down everything. That's my time. Just let's try to reflect that, please.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is like this curiosity around a kind of action that would be in a different mode, that would be about listening, because when action happens, oftentimes people can't hear what each other is saying, which leads to conflict, and these actions end up creating more conflict. And is there like another way to do it? It could be interesting.
Yeah, it would be interesting to change the whole situation into something new, to new quality, direct action or street action that is actually about listening to each other. That would be something interesting for me. Yeah, thank you. I feel heard. Thank you. Your turn, Jennifer.
Okay. So yeah.
You have to choose somebody.
Oh, sorry. Emma, do you mind listening? So I think acknowledging this idea of what can be the dark side of empathy, that I've had the experience where I had a friend who had to tell me, she's like, okay, sometimes I need you to warn me before you kind of unload something that's big and hard, because I'm not always able to have the space for the amount of like challenging emotion that you're throwing my way. And I appreciate that, like, she was able to kind of set that boundary, because it both helped me recognize that you know, boundaries are good for both of us. That she was able to set that and to say, I need a warning. I can't always do this, and that helped me be a little more aware of when I was just talking and unloading and not listening. So that was kind of my connection with what you were talking about there.
So you're saying that you're acknowledging there is a dark side to empathy, and then you're talking about the example of when your friend said to you, hey, before you unload on me, give me a warning, because I might not be able to handle it. And that got you thinking about boundaries. Your friend is obviously really good at boundaries, and it got you looking at boundaries. And you've found that very helpful, both to not overload people with your stuff. But no, you didn't say that, but I'm sort of wondering if you've taken it to the next level, where it helps you stop being overloaded. But you didn't say that, sorry.
Yeah. But this idea of actions that are purely focused on listening, I love it. It's funny, I've tried to teach. So I worked with children for a very long time, and one of the things that we did was teach kids to have conversations about literature in small groups, first in partnerships and then in groups of 4. And the absolute hardest thing to get them to do, because human beings do not do this naturally, is to say, so what I hear you saying is, and to reflect back their answer. Like, we don't do that naturally. It's not a natural part of conversation. But when we're working on, big, serious, difficult issues, it's so important that one person isn't just talking and not knowing how they're being received, and that pause for clarification of what's being received is really important. Just.
So I feedback that bit. So you're fascinated with actions that are based on listening, and your experience of teaching children. They had circles talking about literature, and you found that it so didn't come naturally for children, or I guess anybody else, to feedback what I hear you say is, and you're aware of that technique being so helpful, and you want to make it more widely used because you think it's a really, really, really important skill.
Yeah, exactly. And I would love to see, like, actions that maybe it doesn't have a decision making outcome at first. Like, I could imagine we'd need to, like, stage up. Like, stage 1 might be, we set up in the park one day and do partner listening, and then like the next day, maybe we get groups of 4 going with strangers. Yeah, that's all.
So you think this is such a big thing to learn that we can't do it all at once, so it's got to be done in stages. And so if you did this thing in the park, you'd have the first stage would be the one-on-one, and then after that you'd have this sort of format in order to teach this skill.
Yeah, and I know time's up, but last thing, I think maybe saying that maybe not that it has to be, but that might be a way to help the facilitators, because you'd be dealing with different people every day. But for facilitators to be able to become more comfortable with large groups.
So this way of doing it would help the facilitators so that they're not just sort of suddenly landed in it, but they it helps them to slowly get used to the larger group.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thanks.
Good.
So Emma, would you choose somebody to speak?
Yeah. How many times are we going to be doing this? I'm running out of things to talk about. Is this the last time?
Yeah, probably it's the last round. Yeah. If you can say whatever you want to say. If you feel like you don't have much to say, you can say that you don't have much to say.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Would you like to listen to me?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, I really don't know what to say. Right. I'm actually finally really enjoying this discussion. It's kind of, what was fascinating for me was when Karolina was talking on her turn, not about her, but what about I'd been saying. And it's Jennifer who was feeding back. And suddenly it's like, maybe it was good that I didn't talk about what I was meant to. Maybe I've started, and some of the stuff Jennifer was saying about, I found really helpful, about boundaries, and if we are going to be empathic, we've got to have boundaries. Yeah, I'll shut up.
You found it. You found yourself getting drawn into the conversation, enjoying the conversation, when you started to hear Jennifer not talking about herself so much, but talking about what other people were saying. And
well, it was Karolina who did it, and Jennifer was listening to Karolina.
So Karolina was talking about what Jennifer was saying, and that was what was interesting? No? Did I miss it?
No. Oh. Karolina was talking about what I had said to her, and then Jennifer was responding to that. And I found that whole thing very interesting, the whole dynamic.
Karolina was talking about what you had said to Karolina, and then Jennifer was responding to that, and that dynamic was interesting.
Yes. And the whole thing about what that prompted Jennifer to talk about was the friend with the boundaries, which I think is a wonderful thing we need to talk about when we're talking about empathic circles, because we end up, either we are an empath to start with, or we become very empathetic, and then we go into overwhelm. And boundaries are so good to be talking about.
So you like the topic of boundaries, in particular, in relation to setting up empathy circles. You think it's an important topic to address?
Yes, to prevent overwhelm.
To prevent overwhelm, because if you're an empath, then it's easier to take in more, but if not, then you get overwhelmed taking in too much, and it's good to create a boundary for ourselves to know when we've hit our limits.
Yeah. And I've learned a lot from Jennifer's friend. Yeah. Like that is actually a really good skill to say to your friend, look, I can't actually listen to all this at the moment. I'm sorry, but you know, maybe tomorrow at 2 o'clock I'll listen. Sort of, I don't know, that feels really empowering.
If you want to keep talking, I can remember more than one sentence.
Okay, well, it's kind of, it's like, I think this could be something important for the group, the feedback. The main thing, we need to talk about boundaries in this. We need to talk about empaths getting overwhelmed. These are all things that are important, and it amazes me because I thought at first I was just being a bit off by not talking about the subject, and I now think I've actually offered something quite important.
So you feel that you've stumbled upon an important issue that you see having value for this group in particular, the ability to draw boundaries clearly.
Yeah, and for natural empaths, if they get involved with this work, to really, really think about boundaries before they get too involved. Yeah. I think I've sort of run out of things to say. It's not that I'm stopping to give you a chance. I'm just sort of, I think I've said what I need to say.
You can end earlier if you wish. It's
okay.
It's possible.
Okay. Okay. But actually, one thing I would like to say was, it was quite amazing to me when you were using your turn to talk about what I'd said. I was like, what? Is that how, you know, I sort of want to ask you about it. Am I allowed? Is that, no, I'm not. This is you see, the trouble is, I'm not good at these set things. I can only talk to one person, and yeah.
I'm going to reflect that final piece, which is that you wanted to have a more direct, you wanted to ask Karolina some questions, and you don't feel that you're as good as these, working within these set procedures or boundaries.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Jennifer, would you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Just spending a second to self-connect. So if I were to set up an empathy circle, the differences that I would create are that I would start the circles immediately, maybe after a minute, and I would allow people to learn about the process experientially rather than watching videos. I would skip all of the self-introductions. I feel like that loses a lot of the momentum. We start 25 minutes in and it's a waste. I would also not, I would not do it sequentially. I would say that a person talks, and then whoever would like to respond may respond, but first they empathize with what was said. I wouldn't do time limits, and I would also implement something that I call functional subgrouping. Functional subgrouping is a method by which people join with others in what they have in common, and it's a process from something called system-centered therapy that has theoretical understanding of systems, person systems, group systems, and I find that to be really useful.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is that there are some different ways you would run this a little bit differently. First, you'd start circles immediately so that people can learn about the process experientially. Starting 25 minutes in felt like a waste of time. And then I wasn't clear what you said about one person would talk and then.
Yeah, so the way we do it here is a person talks and then chooses who's going to actively listen, and I would do it where everyone is participating, everyone is actually actively listening silently, but when the person finishes speaking, one person who would like to volunteers and says, I will now paraphrase what you said.
Okay, so what you're saying is you would have all of the people be active listeners within each sort of round, and the speaker would not choose who is going to re-say their thinking. Someone would volunteer instead.
Yes.
Okay, and I think you also said that you would have no time limits, and something also about functional subgrouping, that people would join into groups of what they have in common, that this comes from system-centered therapy, and I kind of wasn't sure.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I said. So this again is where the analytical, theoretical part of me conflicts with the part that likes to do empathy circles, because somehow it's different. I can sense immediately that by talking in this way, I feel like I'm giving a lecture about some process that I value, but that it's disconnected from my relationships with the people here that I'm talking to, and to some extent my feelings.
Okay. Sorry, I take notes because that's how I listen. So you're saying that like the analytical, theoretical part of yourself sort of conflicts with the part of you that likes to do empathy circles, because when you're talking in this kind of circle, it feels like you're giving a lecture and that you're not connected to either your relationship with the listeners or with your own feelings.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Your turn, Jennifer.
Oh, my turn to talk, sorry, okay. And Karolina, can you listen?
Yeah, I will listen to
Thank
you.
you. Okay, so I had a few thoughts. One is, so one of the things we've been working on, and I've been working on as a facilitator within my working group, is using rounds or deliberative decision making in meetings, and so that everybody, it's in a round within a meeting, everybody speaks for a set period of time. The round has a goal, say like you have a round of clarifying questions, and then you have a round of reflection or opinion, and then finally a round of like objection. And a lot of people don't, before they've experienced that, the argument I hear is, then it's not a conversation, it's just people talking at each other. But I actually feel like what we're doing right now shows that that's not the case.
Okay, so you recalling the methods you are as a facilitator in your local group, I suppose, yeah, local group, you are using. It's kind of decision-making process. There are 3 rounds. First is kind of understanding, questions, yeah, something like that, understanding. Then is kind of what people think about it. And the second is kind of making decision or having objection to this decision. So kind of consent or objection, I would say. And people usually think about it as something that is not a real discussion, just talking at each other. But you now observing this circle and you think that it's kind of proof that this is not. That's what you mean?
Yeah, I think so, because it's the way that, like, James noticed that what Emma had said came out in your conversation, and then it got picked up again in my conversation. So we are actually talking to each other, but in a way that allows, when you're not worrying about when your chance to speak is, I find myself being a better listener. So I like this idea of, we go in a circle. Everybody knows how much time they'll have to speak.
Okay. So you recalling this situation here that I was referring to something what Emma was saying, and then you were referring to Emma and I was saying. So we kind of refer to each other, and it is a form of discussion. However, not direct, but it is a form of I feel like I'm a little bit lost in what you were saying. It's kind
Yeah,
of, would you help me?
Yeah, I might be a little lost too, which I think is maybe okay. It goes back to what Emma was saying, of starting out with a point of not really knowing what you think. Like, I think so many times we're expected to give our opinions on things fully formed. Whereas if we have, like, I don't have fully formed opinions on how all of this works yet. And I like the idea of trying out an idea and not knowing if it's really what I think or not.
So you think, now I a little bit recalled what you were saying before. So you were saying that the fact that we are speaking in a round and everybody has its own time, his or her own time, and it makes kind of safe space for better listening. I'm sorry, I have to stop the sign now. For better listening, and it's easier to speak, especially when you don't have clarity about what you think. You can, there is a space for uncertainty. Yeah, that's what you mean?
Yeah.
It's safe space for uncertainty.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'd like, I mean, just practically, I was thinking about, were we to do this in an action, I'd want some pretty clear guidelines. Like, let's have a safe space for uncertainty, and maybe some directives around safety for people, trigger warnings, things like that. The ability to pass.
So you think that this creating a safe space for uncertainty in action, street action, whatever it is, it's kind of interesting idea. That's what you said?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, yeah. It
Okay.
might not be what I said, but I think it's what I meant.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so maybe I choose Emma. Emma, would you listen to me?
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting to create because this safe space for uncertainty, for having right to have no clarity about what I think, it's very important to me because I want to have the right to change my mind, to change my opinion. I don't want to be in a situation when I say something and it has to be until I die. I can change my mind. I can discover that I was wrong and it's nothing bad in it. And I want to have the right to change my opinion. So I need the safe space for this uncertainty, for saying, I'm not sure, but I'm choosing to do something. I'm not sure if it's okay, if it's correct, if it's right, but I'm choosing to do that. I stop there.
Okay, so you are very interested in this concept of a safe space for uncertainty. And it's terribly important to you to have the right to change your mind. And so you really don't want to be in any sort of a group where you say something and that's how it is and you've got to stick to it.
Yeah.
So you want to feel safe. And so the idea of uncertainty is acceptable.
Yeah, yeah. And especially in direct action, in street action, or whatever performance we do, it is very important because usually it is when we perform any direct action, we are right and they, whoever they are wrong.
Yeah.
What if not that obvious? Creating this space for uncertainty is something good because that create dialogue with them, whoever they are, and that's the moment when it's possible to change something. So I need this space for uncertainty. We need that, I think.
And what you're saying is especially you need it when you're involved in the direct action, because if you're so certain and then you're up against other people who are so certain of the opposite, it's not a recipe for working out. Whereas if you're allowed to change, there's a freedom, you didn't say freedom, I've forgotten what you said,
Yeah.
but there was, yeah.
It is a freedom.
It's more acceptable, and you think it's terribly important. You don't want to have specific ideas and stick to them.
Yeah, I don't want to be obligated.
Yeah.
Obligated.
Yeah, either.
To stick with the ideas. I want to have right to change the ideas and to dialogue with the other side and figure out if we are right or maybe there is some good ideas on the other side or whatever. But to dialogue, and I think that Empathy Circle is about regenerative culture. It's about future democracy hub, a future democracy, more inclusive democracy, but it's also about regenerative culture. And it could be an action that create different different quality, different relations between people. It's creating different culture that might stop extinction, actually. That's how I see it.
So what you're saying is this is kind of fundamental to everything. So it's regenerative culture. It could be a way to even stop extinction if we all were more able to not have set ideas, but be willing to go, maybe you're right, maybe I'm right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the important thing is that it's part of regenerative culture. I
Yeah.
see regenerative culture as something revolutionary, actually, because there is a huge lack of empathy and huge lack of regenerative thinking in our civilization. So it is revolutionary idea, and empathy circle is kind of part of it.
So you're saying that the empathy is so part of regenerative culture, and regenerative culture is the way forward. It is a solution. It is terribly, it's the basis of what we're trying to do, changing democracy.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Good.
And now I am confused because I expect that in any minute there will be call for main session, but maybe we have few minutes more.
I want to say something.
Okay, so you choose. So choose somebody.
Just for 1 minute. No, it's not. I just want to say that I'm actually wanting to come out of this. I had a Zoom call for 2 hours prior to this. I have been Zooming for 4 hours, and I'm absolutely, and my head has gone. So I want to drop out, if that's all right.
So let's join.
No. Yeah, we're gonna. Sorry, go ahead.
Go on, James.
You know, no, leave if you need to. I think nobody's going to force you to stay. We're going to go back to the main circle, and it was nice meeting you and Jennifer.
But I would like to see you in main session, Emma. I know you might be tired. I know how it is like staying on Zoom online for a few hours. It's horrible. But please stay with us.
I will stay, but I will actually put my video off so that I can actually wander around and go to the loo.
Okay.
But I'll listen. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and